let me ask you something powerful. Have you ever noticed how the moment you finally stop caring, truly let go, they come running back? It's not magic, it's not coincidence, it's psychology, it's energy. And today we're going to break down exactly why that happens, and how your freedom is the very thing that flips the script. When you're deeply invested in someone, especially an avoidant man, you unconsciously emit an energy of pursuit. It's not just about what you say or do. It's in your tone, your posture, your eyes, your nervous system. Even if you're quiet, even if you're not texting first, they can feel your emotional attachment. And avoidant individuals, they're hypersensitive to emotional intensity, especially when it feels like a demand for closeness. The more they sense you waiting, hoping, or silently reaching for connection, the more they pull away. Not because you're not worthy of love, but because they feel threatened by the weight of your emotional need. It's not your fault, it's their unhealed programming. But here's the game changer. The moment you genuinely stop caring, not pretending, not faking it, not playing mind games, but truly let go of the emotional grip, the energy shifts. Suddenly, your nervous system relaxes. You're no longer living in anxious anticipation. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop scrolling, checking, refreshing. You reclaim your space. And whether they consciously understand it or not, they feel it. This shift in energy is powerful because humans, on a subconscious level, are wired to chase what's elusive and to undervalue what is constantly available. When you were energetically chasing, you were unconsciously signaling, you have something I need to be okay. But when you stop caring, your energy says, I'm already okay, with or without you. And T-at energy, that is magnetic. People often mistake this as manipulation. It's not. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's about returning to your center. It's about detaching from the outcome and reattaching to your own peace. Your peace becomes your power. And when an avoidant man no longer feels your emotional pursuit, something stirs in him. The pressure he once felt is gone. The need to escape dissolves. And ironically, the very freedom you give him by letting go creates the space for him to come forward. They don't come back because of guilt or obligation. They come back because the chase reversed. You stopped chasing them, and now they feel the subtle yet undeniable pull of your self-sufficiency. That's the paradox. Emotional detachment doesn't push people away. When it's rooted in self-respect and inner calm, it draws them in like gravity, not because you wanted it, but because you no longer needed it. When you're emotionally invested in an avoidant man, especially in the early stages of connection or even after a breakup, it often feels like he's holding the cards. You wait for his texts, you analyze his words, you try to predict his next move. Without realizing it, you hand over control, not just of the relationship, but of your emotions, your day, your peace of mind. This dynamic becomes invisible, but it's felt deeply. He senses, often unconsciously, that he holds emotional power over you, that you're available, reactive, hopeful. And for an avoidant, that creates a psychological imbalance that feeds his comfort zone. He knows you're still there. He doesn't have to change. He doesn't have to risk vulnerability. He doesn't have to show up. The control is his. But the moment you stop caring, genuinely stop giving your energy, your overthinking, your emotional availability, that control slips out of his hands. It's not something you announce. It's not something you perform. It's a subtle but powerful shift. You don't wait for the message anymore. You don't spiral when it doesn't come. You don't obsess over what he's thinking or doing. You've stopped needing a response to feel whole. And that shift, it's everything. Because now, he's no longer the one who gets to decide how this goes. You've taken your power back, not through anger or revenge, but through self-ownership. You've chosen to prioritize your peace over his potential. You've ended the emotional tug of war by dropping the rope, and in doing so, you disrupt the pattern. The script that always allowed him to keep you at arm's length without fear of truly losing you no longer works. For the first time, you're unpredictable. And unpredictability creates curiosity. It challenges him. It makes him pause and ask, wait, what just happened here? This doesn't mean he suddenly becomes emotionally available, but it does mean his false sense of security is shaken. His grip on the dynamic loosens, and in that disruption, something powerful can happen: self-reflection. Avoidants are rarely forced to examine their actions unless they're faced with true loss. When you stop caring, You create a silence loud enough for him to hear his own behavior echo back at him. That's when the roles reverse. That's when he starts reaching out. Not because you begged, not because you pushed, but because the energy of control has shifted. Now, he's left wondering, did I lose her for good? And in that question, the chase begins when you're always present, emotionally available, consistently reaching out, responding quickly, showing up for them no matter how little they give. You become part of the background noise in an avoidant man's life, not because your love isn't valuable, but because it's constant. And what's constant often becomes invisible to someone who is emotionally guarded. Avoidant individuals tend to associate closeness with pressure. So the more you're there, texting, explaining, proving your loyalty, the more they feel crowded and the more they emotionally retreat. It's not your presence that drives them away, it's their unhealed fear of intimacy. But here's the irony. It's only once your presence disappears that its value becomes undeniable. You might have spent weeks, months, even years trying to show them what your love meant through patience, effort, and empathy. And yet it went unnoticed. Or worse, it was taken for granted. You were always there, always available, always emotionally invested. And so they never had to question your role in their life. You were like the oxygen in the room, necessary but never consciously appreciated until it's gone. But the moment you stop caring, truly and fully, everything changes. Your silence grows louder than all your previous words combined. Your absence is no longer just the lack of communication, it's the missing energy, the missing reassurance, the emotional warmth that used to surround them. And that absence creates a void they didn't expect to feel. Suddenly, the comfort of knowing you were always an option is gone. The emotional certainty they used to rely on vanishes. That's when the avoidant begins to feel discomfort. Not because they've developed deep emotional maturity overnight, but because they're no longer being emotionally fed. Your love, once freely given, is now missing from their daily life, and they notice. Your name doesn't pop up on their screen anymore. They don't wake up to your check in messages. They don't feel the energetic pull they once resisted. And in the stillness you've left behind, they begin to wonder, where did she go? Why doesn't she care anymore? Has she moved on? It's in that moment, when your absence becomes more piercing than your presence ever was, that the shift happens. The avoidant who once dismissed your efforts now questions his own. Because people don't change when you keep showing up, they change when you stop. And that silence, that space you create when you stop caring, it forces them to face something they've been running from, the reality of losing you. Avoidant men often walk a tightrope between craving intimacy and fearing it. They desire connection. Deep down, they do want to be seen, loved, understood, but the moment they feel emotionally exposed, they retreat. It's not because they don't care. It's because closeness feels dangerous to someone who grew up equating vulnerability with pain, rejection, or loss of control. So they push people away when things get too real, too emotional, too close. But here's the paradox: the same man who runs from intimacy is also terrified of abandonment. He doesn't know how to fully hold love, but he also doesn't know how to fully lose it. When you're emotionally invested and available, he feels pressure. He interprets your vulnerability as expectation. He fears that open up will lead to dependency or worse, rejection. So he distances himself. He detaches. He avoids hard conversations, and in doing so, he creates emotional space between you and him, thinking he's protecting himself. But the moment you stop caring, when you detach from needing answers, when you no longer chase, beg, or hope, something inside of him starts to panic. The pressure is gone, but so is the safety net. For the first time, he begins to feel the consequence of his emotional distance. Now he's no longer being overwhelmed by your closeness. Now, he's being confronted by your absence. That absence doesn't feel like freedom anymore. It feels like loss. It forces him to face what he's been avoiding all along, that he might actually want the very thing he ran from. Because while intimacy scares avoidants, true loss terrifies them more. Especially when it's quiet, clean, and confident. When you walk away without anger or drama, that's when it hits the hardest. You're no longer reacting to his silence. You're not trying to fix anything. You're not trying to be chosen. You've chosen yourself. And in that moment, the dynamic flips. Suddenly, he's the one dealing with uncertainty. He starts to wonder if you've truly let go. He replays old conversations in his head. He scrolls through your photos, rereads old messages, and begins to feel the emotional depth he once dismissed. Your emotional unavailability, the very thing he feared from you, now becomes the thing that draws him in. This is where many avoidant men begin to circle back. Not because you manipulated the situation, but because you removed the one thing they took for granted, your unwavering presence. In losing that, they start to confront their fear of intimacy not as a hypothetical threat, but as a very real source of regret. When you finally stop caring, when your emotional energy is no longer centered around him, you trigger something deeply rooted in the avoidant man's subconscious, his attachment wound. This is the very wound he's spent years, maybe even decades, trying to avoid feeling. While on the surface he may seem cool, distant, or even indifferent, underneath all of that attachment is an inner child who once felt unsafe with emotional closeness. Someone who learned early in life that love often came with string expectations or pain. So what did he do? He built walls. He developed a pattern of keeping people at arm's length, not because he doesn't crave love, but because love feels unpredictable, even dangerous. But here's what makes your detachment so powerful. Avoidants expect you to always be there, to be understanding, to try harder, to chase, to forgive too soon. That's what they're used to. So when you do the opposite, when you stop trying, stop engaging, stop caring the way you used to, it sends a shockwave through their nervous system. What felt like a stable pattern is now broken. The emotional safety net he didn't even realize he was relying on, gone. That's when the fear of abandonment kicks in. You didn't abandon him, but to his nervous system, it feels like you did. And ironically, the very person who distanced himself to avoid vulnerability suddenly feels the pain of disconnection that he thought he wanted, because now he's no longer in control of the narrative. He can't just pop in and out of your emotional world anymore. That door, the one that used to be wide open, is closing. And the child inside him who fears abandonment, rejection, and emotional loss wakes up. This moment of reckoning is powerful. It doesn't always look like a dramatic realization. Sometimes it shows up quietly. He checks your social media more than usual. He thinks about reaching out but hesitates. He finds himself replaying things you said, wondering how he missed the signs that you were slipping away. And it's not because he suddenly became emotionally available. It's because his attachment wound was activated. Your emotional withdrawal mirrored an emotional abandonment he once experienced long ago. Except this time he doesn't have the same defenses in place. Because he didn't expect you to stop caring. He thought he had time. He thought you'd always be waiting. Now, he's left feeling the very thing he spent his whole life trying to avoid, the pain of losing someone who truly cared. When you're in a dynamic with an avoidant man, it's easy to fall into the trap of overgiving. You try harder, love louder, stay longer. You think that you can just love him enough, support him enough, understand your works, him enough, he'll finally open up. But in that process, you start abandoning yourself. Your confidence erodes. Your boundaries blur. You become so focused on earning his love that you forget your own value. And that energy of needing validation, of proving your worth, isn't attractive. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because desperation, even in its softest form, repels. But then comes the turning point. Maybe you've cried enough. Maybe you've exhausted every last bit of hope. Or maybe one day you just decide you're done begging for crumbs. You stop caring, not out of bitterness, but out of exhaustion and awakening. You begin to remember who you were before you got entangled in someone else's emotional limitations. You take a breath. You pause the noise, and slowly confidence replaces desperation. This transformation is not loud, it's not dramatic, but it is magnetic, because now your runaway never works. You're not waiting for a text to feel worthy. You're not checking your phone every 5 minutes hoping he'll care. You're not molding yourself to fit someone else's emotional unavailability. You've stepped out of the role of the fixer and into the power of your own self-respect. And that shift changes everything. Confidence has a different frequency. It doesn't chase, it attracts. It doesn't beg to be chosen. It chooses itself. It moves through the world with quiet certainty, and that is what draws people in more than any words or actions ever could. And for the avoidant man who once felt in control, this new version of you is unfamiliar, intriguing, compelling. The person who used to need him now doesn't, and that flips a switch in his brain. He begins to feel the loss of your emotional energy, and suddenly, the version of you he overlooked becomes the version he can't stop thinking about. He might not even understand why he feels pulled toward you again. But deep down, it's your never works because your energy has changed. You've gone from chasing connection to embodying self-worth. And there's nothing more attractive than someone who doesn't need love to feel complete, but who radiates love from within. That's when the avoidance stops running. Not because you chased harder, but because you stopped chasing at all. When you spend your days bending over backward for someone who keeps pulling away, you're not being rewarded for your love. You're being drained by your self-sacrifice. You keep telling yourself that if you're just more patient, more understanding, more forgiving, eventually he'll come around. But the universe doesn't reward the energy of chasing, proving, or pleading. It responds to alignment. And alignment begins when you realize that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. Avoidant men often don't recognize your value while they have full access to you. They grow used to your kindness, your softness, your willingness to show up over and over again, even after being dismissed. But what they don't expect, what truly shakes their internal world, is when that version of you disappears. When the woman who once gave endlessly without receiving starts to pull back, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with clarity. That's when the universe begins to shift in your favor. There's something undeniably powerful about a woman who no longer sacrifices herself for the sake of being loved. When you stop over-explaining, stop over-giving, stop tying your worth to how someone else responds to you, you elevate, your energy changes, you become grounded, centered, and whole. And that energy is not only felt by the man who once kept you dangling, it's felt by the world. Doors begin to open. Other people begin to take notice. Opportunities flow more freely. Why? Because you're no longer leaking your energy into a one-sided relationship that drains you. The universe doesn't align with desperation. It aligns with dignity. It doesn't support patterns where you keep betraying yourself in the name of love. It moves in harmony with those who stand in their worth. So when you stop caring, not in a cold-hearted way, but in a self-honoring way, you send a loud message to the universe. I am no longer available for love that makes me shrink. And that declaration, it activates something bigger than just one relationship dynamic. It changes the way people treat you. It changes what you attract. And ironically, that's often when the avoidant man starts feeling your absence like a loss he never prepared for. Not because you tried harder, but because the version of you who begged for love no longer exists. And in your rising, in your quiet refusal to settle, the very thing you were chasing starts chasing you. Because the universe mirrors back the energy you choose. And when you choose self-worth over self-sacrifice, it answers in ways you never expected. At the heart of this entire journey is a simple but often painful truth. People don't change when you're chasing them. They change when your energy shifts. Avoidant men don't come back because you begged harder, texted more, or proved your love louder. They come back when your energy no longer tells them, "You complete me." They come back when your silence speaks louder than your words ever did, when you stop trying to earn love and start remembering your own. That shift is not about manipulation or games. It's about liberation. The moment you choose yourself over the cycle of emotional chasing, you begin to magnetize what you were once pleading for. Throughout this speech, we've uncovered what really causes that shift. It's not a tactic. It's transformation. When you stop caring, your energy becomes calm, grounded, untouchable. The control they once had over your emotions slips away, and they're left to sit in the space they created. Your absence becomes a mirror that reflects back their emotional limitations, their fear of intimacy, and their attachment wounds. And for the first time, they are forced to confront a truth they've long avoiding. You're no longer theirs to lose it because you already walked away. That's when the pattern breaks. That's when they begin to circle back. But the deeper truth, whether they return or not, no longer defines your peace. The real power was never in getting them back. It was in getting you back. The version of you that stopped begging. The version of you that started healing. The version of you that looked in the mirror and said, "I don't chase love. I am love." And when that version of you is born, everything changes. You stop accepting crumbs because you finally believe you're worthy of the whole table. You stop confusing silence with safety. You stop waiting for someone to choose you because you already did. So if you're in that space, tired, broken, confused, hear this: your healing is not in his return. Your healing is in your release. Let him come back if he chooses, but don't lose yourself again if he does. You are not here to convince someone of your worth. You are here to embody it, because when you do, the world, including the people who once overlooked you, has no choice but to feel the power of your presence or the impact of your absence. Either way, you win. Thank you so much for watching this video. If something in this message resonated with your heart, it's not by accident. You are growing. You are healing. You are reclaiming your power. I appreciate you taking the time to invest in yourself today. If this content brought you clarity or strength, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world. And remember, you are not alone on this journey. This is a safe space for growth, truth, and transformation. Until next time, stay strong, stay grounded, and most importantly, stay true to you. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next one.